We're going to talk about one of the issues of our time, coral bleaching. But before anything else, let us first understand what coral is. Coral are animals. According to the documentary film Chasing Coral, a coral individual is really made up of thousands of small structures called polyps. Each polyp is a circular mouth surrounded by tentacles, and they can combine to be millions of them across a single animal. Also, coral are translucent. They get their rainbow of colors from these tiny plant-like organisms called zooxanthellae living inside their tissues. These algae photosynthesize, and the coral uses that for its food. So, as it grows, what you see is the animal is growing over the skeleton and depositing the skeleton underneath it. They photosynthesize during the day, and at night, the plants actually sleep and the animals become active. They expand their polyps and the tentacles come out, and now anything that swims by is caught by the stinging cells that are on the tips of the tentacles. There are many different species of corals, and they are the basis of this ecosystem. They are the reason why we have reefs. Although coral reefs cover only a tiny fraction of the planet, they are home to 25% of all marine species. It's been estimated that up to 2 million species inhabit coral reefs, rivaling the biodiversity of a rainforest. This biodiversity is a source of food and income for over 500 million people. Researchers have also begun to understand how coral reef organisms can contribute to the development of new medicines to treat everything from cancer, arthritis, human bacterial infections, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, viruses, and other diseases. For many coastal areas, coral reefs also serve as an important barrier, protecting our coast from waves, storms, and floods, and preventing loss of life, property damage, and erosion. And let's not forget the role tourism and recreation play in the coral reef economy, attracting tourists who gladly pay for the opportunity to dive and snorkel among the corals, creating livelihood for millions of individuals. However, coral reefs around the world are vanishing at an unprecedented rate. This is caused by different threats that include warming waters. 93% of heat that is trapped by the atmosphere is absorbed by the ocean, and this warms up the water. This warming will result to prolonged coral bleaching, which kills coral. Overfishing and destructive fishing, careless tourism, pollution, sedimentation that smothers corals by depriving them of the light needed to survive, and coral mining specifically for jewelry industry. Coral bleaching is a stress response caused by rapid change of anomaly in water temperatures. So when the temperatures spike just a little bit above or below their normal range, the ability of the small plants living inside coral's tissues to photosynthesize and to feed the animal host is impaired. The animal eventually sensed it, and they will start to expel those plants that are no longer functional and leave behind the transparent naked tissue or skeleton. Coral now lost the major food source that they have, so they start to starve. When the coral bleaches, it does not mean that it's dead. It just doesn't allow anything else to grow on it. It will generally not grow and reproduce. It is likely to die. You'll see these fuzzy microalgae, the whole surface suddenly becomes much fuzzier to look at, and that's the indication that the coral has died. Globally, ENSO generated massive bleaching and coral mortality, which contributed to the likely extinction of coral species. This is a phenomenon that takes place in the central and eastern equatorial Pacific, largely characterized by an interaction between the ocean and the atmosphere and their combined effect on climate. This phenomenon includes the El Niño and La Niña conditions. Past reports have estimated that over 15% of the world's coral reefs were effectively lost during the 1997 to 1999 period. This was the first global-scale mass bleaching. At that time, NOAA Coral Reef Watch observed widespread prolonged high temperatures that caused coral bleaching. This was associated with what has been argued to be the largest El Niño on record, followed immediately by a strong La Niña. 2010, only 11 years later, we saw the second global-scale mass bleaching. And now, only 5 years later, we've got the potential of the third global-scale mass bleaching event. You might think that coral bleaching is just a natural cycle that we go through. But this is not. This is a phenomenon directly attributed to climate change. Corals are one of the most beautiful creatures of the planet. They are like the trees of the forest. And if the ocean temperature continues to increase, the oceans become too warm for corals to survive. And if they die, it will not just affect a quarter of the ocean, but the whole ecosystem will collapse and millions of people will suffer. And we cannot let them just die and become an old textbook. Fortunately, there are things that we can do to protect coral reefs. So now that we realized what is happening, we have the option to get involved in the solution and speak for the corals and save them. It is never too late. It is achievable.